Good evening, I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. The big story tonight is all about the imminent crisis at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. 3 commissioners quit this morning, citing lack of leadership and disunity. Vice Chairperson Consolata Nkatha, Commissioners Paul Kurgat and Margaret Mwachanya announced their exit from the poll agency, noting their frustrations under Wafula Chebukati's leadership. In their joint statement, the 3 commissioners expressed concern over external meddling in the Commission's affairs, saying Chebukati has failed to provide steady and stable leadership. The Commission has a lot of key activities pending, including evaluation of the 2017 general election, and there's a boundaries review as well, and pending by-elections. With the CEO Ezra Chiloba on 3 months compulsory leave and just a shell of a commission left, what can we expect from the IEBC, or is it virtually a dead body? This is our focus tonight. And you can weigh in as well on the discussion. The hashtag to use is The Big Story. You can tweet me at Yvonne Okwara and at KTN News.
For far too long and way too many times, the Commission Chair has failed to be the steady and stable hand that steers the ship in difficult times and gives direction when needed. Instead, under his leadership, the Commission boardroom has become a venue for peddling money, misinformation, grounds for brewing mistrust, and a space for scrambling for and chasing individual glory and credit. Under the current Commission leadership, we have had many instances where statements have been issued purporting to give a position of the Commission. Yet, those statements are mispresentation of facts. The events of the last 10 days are a clear manifestation of this dysfunction.
That is, well, now former commissioner at the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, Margaret Mwachanya, when they made that statement earlier today. And in response, the Commission's chair, Wafula Chebukati, had this to say. He says, I learned from media reports that 3 of my commissioners, Ms. Nkatha Maina, Ambassador Dr. Paul Kurgat, and Ms. Margaret Mwachanya, have resigned today. I am yet to receive formal communication on this matter. The Commission will give a comprehensive statement at an appropriate time. That is the chair of the Independent Electoral Management Body. So we'll also be discussing that statement and whether he can indeed make a statement now, considering quorum matters. But I'm in good company tonight. We have a constitutional lawyer who has expertise in matters election. That is the Executive Director of the Electoral Law and Governance Institute for Africa, Felix Owor. We also have lawyer and advocate Willis Otieno, who's joining us from our studios at the City Centre. You'll remember that Willis Otieno was the NASA lawyer at a time when the opposition coalition was calling for the resignation of the IEBC CEO. But let's first speak to our lead reporter here on the show, Sophia Wanuna, who will put the matters into perspective for us before we can begin our discussion. Sophia, good evening. It is good to speak to you this brand new week with, indeed, some brand new issues yet again at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. But I think the great place to start with you, Sophia, is this. Let's remind ourselves how this commission came to be in the first place, because it was as a result of a political fallout. Just take us down memory lane with that.
Good evening, Yvonne. Indeed, tonight things fall apart. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, with the exit of the Vice Chair Maina and Commissioners Kurgat, now former Commissioners Kurgat, as well as Mwachanya. And as you said, they have just been in office about a year, 3 months, been sworn in January last year. And to take us back, yes, it was a political, bipartisan approach that got us to have this commission as a country. You remember in the lead up to the 2017 general election in 2016, the then Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, CORD, led by Raila Odinga, maintained that the country could not and should not at the time go to the election in 2017 with a commission, Ishaq Hassan-led team, as had been constituted at the time. They had run the 2013 election, an election that Raila Odinga believed was stolen from him. It was botched. So he maintained and piled a lot of political pressure, including we saw protests and demonstrations here in the capital, piling pressure on the government and maintaining that that particular IEBC could not conduct, manage, oversee the 2017 general election. And with that pressure piling up, with a lot of support from other sections of the civil society, then we saw the Kenyatta administration conceding ground and forming that joint parliamentary select committee led by Kiraitu representing Jubilee and Orengo representing CORD at the time. And so when these parties met, it was agreed that in fact that commission at the time, the Ishaq-led team, resign and be given a send-off package. It is understood a total of about 200 million shillings was spent to have them leave earlier than, of course, their terms required of them to be in office, and that the selection panel would then be formulated to come up with a brand new Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission team to oversee the 2017 general election. And Yvonne, the two parties then had representatives that sat in the panel, Jubilee two representatives, the same as CORD. The rest of the members of the selection panel for the now Chebukati team were individuals from various religious groups, the Hindu community, religious entity, you have the Catholics, the Muslims, coming together with these other four teams from the representatives from the political side. And so they conducted the interviews and settled on Wafula Chebukati and the other then 6 commissioners, bringing down the number of commissioners from what we had from the Ishaq Hassan-led team. So they were brought and came into office to serve one term of 6 years. And also, Yvonne, the law that had been in place, being repealed with this Joint Select Committee with the Elections Amendment Act 2016. However, the thing with that law, it was just for this transition period, so that as it stands now, Kenya does not have a law that would put in place and facilitate and guide the formation and bringing into the IEBC other commissioners. So 4 commissioners out, 3 commissioners now left in office. There is no law that guides and stipulates how the country should go about enlisting and getting commissioners into the IEBC as it stands now. However, earlier on we saw reactions, Yvonne, from the leader of minority, James Sorengo, who was part of that process, calling for the other 3 to actually also resign and saying that in fact this confirms that the 2017 election was botched and that credibility for the Jubilee government is also now in question following this. Also, the leader of majority in the Senate, that is Kipchumba Murkomen, also saying that the 3 should also resign. In fact, talking about a timeline of 7 days, failure to which they will be calling for a tribunal to be formed to investigate them, seeking to oust them from office as well, Yvonne.
Yes, and then also just recap for us the fallout we have seen between the Commission and the Secretariat, particularly between the chair of the Commission and the CEO, Ezra Chiloba, who's now on 3 months compulsory leave.
Yes, that has been an epic fallout that has played out in the public gallery, beginning with leaking of memos from the CEO, from the chair to the CEO. One of the most explosive memos we saw was demanding answers to very tough questions regarding the 2017 general elections, and some of those concerns that the chair raised at the time were the issues we saw NASA now at the time raising and asking the same questions. So a couple of issues that emerged between the two, the chair asking for these answers, the chair also asking the CEO to suspend some of the officials in the ICT team. However, that did not happen. The CEO defending those officials because of the usage of password that had been brought up. And Chebukati at the time had argued that he had not given permission to these individuals in the ICT department, the IEBC, to use it for whatever engagement it was seen to have taken place during the electioneering period. And Yvonne, this continued even in the lead up to the election, actually forcing the team, because of the disaster it was playing out and the loss of confidence in the country with an election approaching and a team that was not cohesive, was not reading from the same page. Counter-accusations. Also, the commissioners split within themselves. There appeared to be those who aligned themselves with the CEO, the likes of the Vice Chair, Kurgat and Mwachanya. And then you saw those that aligned themselves with the Chair, Bolu and Gulie as well. And this saw the commissioners actually go for a retreat in Naivasha, which I covered, and even had religious leaders come to speak to them, motivational speakers, reminding them of the importance of having the bigger picture in mind and remembering the legacy that they will be remembered by the actions they took at that critical time in Kenya's history. However, all of that, despite them announcing that they had now buried the hatchet and were all good to go to the election, after the election, then we've seen all of this play out again with the CEO being sent on compulsory leave as an audit has been conducted into procurements, the big procurement tenders around the presidential election, the repeat election as well. But the CEO appearing not to want to take this lying down, he moved to court to block that. However, the judge maintaining he would not give those ex parte orders. He'd want to hear this matter and it will be heard on May the 7th. For now, the CEO remains suspended. But important to remember, Yvonne, as the commission now stands with just 3 commissioners, it is paralyzed. It's on its knees. It cannot function in the sense that the law as it stands, despite the amendments that had been put in place and passed by Parliament, they were reversed by the court when the court found that it was unconstitutional, especially on the question around quorum. It reinstated the law as it was before, that quorum is 5. So now with 3, the IEBC Commission does not have quorum for a decision to stand. It must be of majority of the commissioners. So things right now are very dire for the Commission. However, as you see, some, like those in Jubilee, the majority leader in the Senate, calling for the resignation of these other members. In the National Super Alliance, they say Jubilee stood by this IEBC, defended them in the lead up to the election when, even at the time, Raila Odinga and NASA maintained that some of the individuals there should have been ousted. So again, we're back to that conversation about the electoral management and the body itself and how we've seen the acrimonious manner in which these officials leave office. And it will be interesting to see what action is taken, if at all, by the remaining commissioners.
Sophia Wanuna, our lead reporter on the show tonight, putting perspective to how we got here, how we got this commission in the first place, and indeed the fallout that has resulted since August 8th last year, and even before that, and where we are now. So we will talk about that a little bit more with my guest tonight. So let's get straight into it. We have, like we mentioned at the start of the show, we've got Felix Owor and Willis Otieno. Willis, I'd like to start with you first. Your reaction. I mean, you know, NASA had been very vocal about this commission and about speaking to some of the ills that were there. So your reaction to what's happened all day today?
Let me just say this. Our position was and has always been that the IEBC, as was constituted for the last general elections, was what we call a joint criminal enterprise. And today, we have more than been vindicated from that position which we held then and that position which we still hold today. And this is seen in the statement that was issued by the minority leader, Senator James Orengo, that this was a felonious conspiracy between persons who are working within the IEBC. And we do not have confidence in the Commission. We don't have the confidence in the Commission even today. And we do hold the view as a coalition that the remaining members of the IEBC should do the dutiful thing and resign from their positions. And then the subsequent step is that those who participated in a process that has defeated the true wish of the people of Kenya, they should go through the due process of the law. You'll remember there was the memorandum from Chebukati to Chiloba that raised issues of criminality in the conduct of some of the staff of the Commission. There was also some of the issues which arose in the course of the hearings of the Supreme Court petition, including an order for the IEBC to open up the servers for inspection by the court. That was never done. So that was a criminal act, an act of contempt of court. Then we have again today some of the commissioners who are very vocal in denying any acts of criminality or misconduct within the commission, coming out to today in almost similar words, stating that the commission is divided along partisan lines, that there are acts which have been done that compromise the integrity and the independence of the commission. In other words, within what they are claiming, you will find criminal conduct that was being perpetuated and being carried out within the IEBC.
All right.
We do hold the view that the IEBC is a joint criminal enterprise, and perpetrators of that criminal act should face the full force of the law.
Okay. However, the process with which we got this commission was in itself a political settlement. Even as Sophia has rightly put it, this came out from that. So I would like to then ask Felix this question, about, well, those claims of political bias, but this in itself was a sort of temporary stopgap measure to just enable us have an election last year. So are we surprised with the fallout now, Felix?
Well, I'm not surprised personally. Yeah. And you will recall that I was clear, consistent, and unambiguous in my assessment and evaluation of IEBC throughout last year. First of all, I think it's necessary for us to put everything in context. How this commission came about, in as much as it may be argued that it was as a result of political negotiation or a political compromise, it wasn't in the manner of the IPPG, the model that gave us the commission that presided over the 2002 election. Ultimately, the president was the appointing authority, and all the commission. You remember there were people who were said to have been more qualified than those who eventually found themselves in the commission. But I think the bigger question here is it has to be if you analyze and assess the performance of this commission against every other commission that we have had since 1992. This commission will go in history as the most incompetent and partisan, and I'm not saying this now. You will recall I consistently said this throughout last year. What we are seeing now is a classical case of the chicken coming home to roost. But in the long term and the immediate term, and in fact, this presents us with an opportunity to look at the whole issue of election management in this country. Yvonne, we have had 6 multi-party elections since the country reverted back to multi-party politics in 1991. And out of the 6 multi-party elections, we've had 6 electoral commissions. The Chesoni Commission, the Kivuitu Commission, the IPPG Commission, the IIC Commission, Medizaka IEBC, and now Wafula Chebukati IEBC. These are 6 commissions. It cannot be said that every time we are faced with the question of having an election, then we must always revisit the question of election.
All right, I'd like to interject there for a moment, because what happens now, indeed, even the laws that were put in place to allow this process to happen and this commission to come into place, what happens if we want a new commission? What sort of laws are we going to rely on? There's a number of people that are saying we have no law in place to replace those commissioners who have left, or indeed to replace Wafula Chebukati and the others who've remained.
To the best of my recollection, and Willis can chip in here as well, the Schedule 1 of IEBC still stands. What happens now would be, if my reading of the law is correct, is that within 14 days, a nomination panel or a selection panel would have to be constituted. What we have to appreciate is that there is a vacancy of 4 in the commission affecting 4 commissioners. In other words, we have 4 positions that needs to be filled. So the Schedule 1 of the IEBC would have to kick in which case a nomination panel, a selection panel would have to be constituted within 14 days. The panel, of course, as was said, would have representatives from the Public Service Commission and 5 religious organizations or nominees nominated by the religious organizations. This should happen within 14 days. Now, they will have 7 days once the panel is constituted to advertise for the vacant position. Then the process will then take the normal course of shortlisting, interviewing, and 6 names, because there are 4, would have to be presented to the president, and then the president would then forward the names to parliament and then subsequently approve. But this is not how we should constitute the successor commission of this commission.
Okay, and we will get to that in a moment.
Yes.
So what you're saying is there is no lacuna in law as at this moment.
As
with
far
respect
as
to
I'm
replacing them.
yeah, I think the IEBC Act of 2011 still apply.
All right, and we will get to what happens with this commission, whether we should, overhaul it completely. And we'll talk about that because, like you're saying, we've had a commission for every multi-party election we've had since '91. But Willis, what can this commission do right now, legally speaking? The CEO who runs the Secretariat is on compulsory leave, pending an audit, internal audit into, his conduct and certain matters that were raised by the chair. But then also, with respect to quorum, do they have it? Because we know that the laws that were brought in to bring down the quorum to 3, but then the judge, just the other day again, rendered that useless. So, for example, Wafula Chebukati says he will release a statement in due time with respect to today's events. Can he even do that without the required quorum? What can this commission do as it stands right now?
Let me put it this way, that
Please?
Hello?
Okay, we seem to have lost Willis. We will get back to you in just a moment. I think we need to...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Willis. Please carry on.
Let me put it this way, that if you look at the first schedule to the IEBC Act, it sets out the quorum for the commission. And as it were, that the reduced quorum as having been declared to be unlawful by the court, then it means this commission, as presently constituted, cannot proceed to function as a commission of the IEBC. Number two, even if you look at the constitutional architecture for the establishment of the independent commission in the Constitution, that commission must reflect the diversity of the people of Kenya. So that the IEBC, as was envisaged, should have a wide representation from the people of Kenya. Having only 3 commissioners out of a possible 7, by itself demonstrates that we have what is called a minority commission. The Constitution does not at any point envisage a minority commission to be able to oversee the functions that have been bestowed upon the IEBC. Number 3, let me say this. The most honorable thing that the IEBC, the remaining commissioners should do, is to honorably resign from office and give the people of Kenya an opportunity to have a genuine conversation and discussion on how they can set up a proper commission that has the confidence of the people of Kenya. You will recall that in the run-up to the last general elections, the people of Kenya did not have that full confidence. In fact, we had constant demonstrations that were being led by the NASA coalition for the commissioners to step aside and allow a more prudent process to select commissioners and to oversee those elections. Several people died. The IEBC became, if you recall, it became a barricaded military garrison, which was surrounded by police, fully armed police officers in military fatigues. So that is not a body that inspired confidence in the people of Kenya. So that let us do away with this commission. Then we go back to our history. Then in our history, we will find, for example, that the commission of 2002 that Felix talked about, the IPPG commission, in my view, that was the best commission that oversaw an election process in which the person who lost that election, Uhuru Kenyatta, was the first to concede. He did believe that the process itself was very fair to him, that he did not even wait for the commission to make a final declaration of the results. But subsequently, we've had commissions which are very partisan. They don't inspire confidence of the people of Kenya. So we must go back to the drawing board and design a commission that has full confidence of the electors and political players, and including political parties, that should be able to midwife an election where the process is very transparent and meets the provisions of Article 81 of the Constitution, the principles of the electoral system. All right. And finally, let me say this.
I'd like us to...
Wafula Chebukati may seek to...
Yeah, I'd like us to take a break first. We absolutely have to take a break at this point. We will come back. We have much more to discuss. Please hold that thought, Willis Otieno. I don't mean to cut you off, but we do need to take that break now. You're watching The Big Story. When we come back, we'll talk about a little bit more. Overhauling the commission. What are some of the other ways of getting the commissioners out, if that is what it will come to? We'll be right back, right here on The Big Story.